जय हिंद, जय भारत एंड वेलकम टू डेव टॉक्स. दिस इज आदि सिंह. हमारे साथ हैं डॉक्टर विजय सजावाल जो हमको ही विल एक्चुअली टेक अस थ्रू समथिंग वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. We talk about, actually I'm just going to steal the line that Sir just told me. We talk about the deep state all over the world. But what I thought that Sir will tell us today is how that the deep state impact America. And my kafi bari I've said this, that the deep state eats America from within. So let's find out how does this whole thing work. Namaskar, sir. Thank you so much for the time. And I'm sure this is going to be a lovely pleasure talking to you and learning from you once again.
Thank you. Uh, I, I appreciate your giving me this platform to explain something which is really interesting and actually also very timely because today the Democratic Party convention began in Chicago, and it's a very different routine than what has been in the past, and because on the 21st of July, the our president, uh, uh, Joe Biden, basically came on the White House office, our room, and said that he was not planning to seek a second term, which was contrary to everything that he had been working for before. And more importantly, all the constitutionally placed steps towards that presidential election had been followed by him.
Mm.
And he had emerged as the Democratic Party candidate for the presidency. And that was one of the rare times we actually saw the deep state working to convince him that he needs to go. Now, a lot of people talk about, did he go because he did poorly in the debate, which had taken place a few weeks earlier. But then again, debates are won and lost, and you don't really say one debate is going to make everything or not. So that could be a reason, but that may not be the reason. The other one was, oh, he is growing senile. We can see it happening. He is, forgetting things, stumbling here and there. But that had been happening with him for the last 3 years.
Mm.
So that was not new either. But again, as I will explain, how these things are covered up in the system. In other words, why it wasn't a story 2 years back or 1 year back and became a story of now that he is because his condition is no better or worse than it was before, maybe slightly worse, but not really necessarily all that bad. So that was another reason. The third one was, of course, that he is likely going to be losing the election if he were to continue as a candidate. And there is some merit to that also, but there are other really complex behind the scenes efforts that one needs to understand how the system works in the United States, because I don't think many people in India understand elections in the United States and elections in India are not very similar, especially when it comes to the presidential election. They are pretty much same, or not same, but similar in other cases, but not in the presidential election. But one of the features in American election is that, and we're not going to ask, we're going to do three things. We're not going to be going deep into these matters because that's not really the subject matter. We're not going to ask ourselves why is it what it is, because that's how the Constitution of America is written, and we're not discussing Constitution of America. And to keep things simple, I'm also going to generalize things. So what I say sometimes is probably 90% happens that way, maybe 10% doesn't. But the point is, the sense of my message would be what is the trend. And part of that reasoning comes because there is no centralized election system in the United States. Elections are held by the states per the state rules, which can vary tremendously. I'm not going to go into the reason. I mean, voting is one way, but voting is not the only way you select candidates, and each state has different. In fact, there are states which don't require even identification to show up to show that you can vote, and so who votes and who doesn't vote is itself pretty much up to the jargon of the state. But in presidential elections, so Senate votes, you vote for the senator, you vote for the congressman. They are they are selected in a primary system, as is the president. And keeping the focus on the president, basically, when they the candidates are from different parties, multiple candidates from different parties can come emerge and say, well, I want to be my party's candidate. So they go into this election process, and in the election process, they end up, whoever gets the maximum votes, basically is given a certain number of delegates,
Mm.
and it's in most cases it is winner take all. In other words, if Democrats have, let's say, 100 delegates in one state, and one candidate wins that state, even by 1 or 2 votes over the next primary person, he gets all the delegates. And so that's how the primary is selected. Primary does not have the name of the vice president on it. I'm talking about presidential election. It's only for the name of the president. So the central or the federal process comes into play only when they end up essentially uh, voting in November, which is also a misnomer, which I'll explain just now, and creating what we call as the Electoral College.
Mm.
So you never actually vote for the candidate per se; you are actually voting for electors, and there are 538 electors, and 538 corresponds to the number of senators and congressmen from each state, if you add them all up, plus the District of Columbia, which is treated as a state. So de facto, you have 51 states. You get 538 electors. And so they form the Electoral College, and they will eventually, even though the results are pretty much known around the election time in November, by 6th, 7th, or whatever, November, but formally they are formalized in 6th of January, the following year. But the results are really well known. So we have a very unique process right now where in the Democratic Party, which is having a convention right now, they are actually, what they're doing is the people selected somebody else. People voted in all the states for Mr. Biden,
Mm.
and they came over to this delegate. All delegates are there. So what they're doing there today is, and again, first let me also explain about myself. I am a politically independent person. I'm a registered independent. I'm not a member of the Democratic Party or a member of the Republican Party. I am, and what that does is that I cannot participate in the primary process, because primary process voting is only intended for people who have declared themselves as either Democrats or Republicans, and not independents like me who can only vote in the final election, which is the so-called November election for the president. And
Mhm.
and and so what is happening in actually in Chicago today is sort of reminiscent of the way the People's Congress meets in Beijing, which is they have these thousands and thousands of delegates there, and they have already made a list of the people who are going to be selected. And so what they do is at that meeting they basically decide who is going to be who are going to be the selected candidates. I think they
Mm.
have 373 in their system, because what is happening in Chicago is nobody voted for Miss Kamla Harris. But what they did is they basically decided that we are going to change our vote from Biden to to Kamala Harris, because that's what the party's wish was. But the
Just like
people
that.
who voted when they voted in the primaries voted for
Biden.
Joe Biden. They didn't vote
Mm.
for Kamala's name was not even on the distribution. So you have to understand, it sort of smirks like the way you know Chinese do it in their hall of public service, or whatever they call it, in near Tiananmen Square. Basically, somebody passes them the name. Here are the names, and you give it. And in this case, they gave the name of Kamala, Harris, and so everybody is now voting for Kamala Harris. So she will be de facto nominated, in the next 2 or 3 days as the official candidate of the Democratic Party. But what happens is when the election starts, and election starts, quite frankly, there's early voting, there's absentee voting, there's mail-in voting, and then there is the personal. You can vote, and the process will start in 2 3 weeks. Even though the actual formal election day is in November, it will start right away. So people will start vote, and there's always been a question of, some of the authentication of the papers in various modes are questionable. Democratic states tend to be more liberal as to, they don't really do a lot of checking. Republicans run states do checking, because as I said, this is all state run operations until the Electoral College is decided. But a unique thing that happens is that the Electoral College, in the Electoral College selection, let's say you talk about, let's say California has, I think, 54 electoral votes, because it's the largest, most populous state. And there's an election between, obviously in the voting that will happen there between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. So if one candidate wins by even one vote or 1 million votes, it doesn't matter. The winner will get all the 54 seats, all the 54 members of the Electoral College. So you win all of them. And then at the lower end is Alaska, which has only 3 electoral seats. Again, the same thing. You can get, million votes, or you can get one vote. Whosoever is the winner by either million, or he will get all the three electoral colleges. So votes. So electors are selected on the basis of whosoever has got. And as I said, there is some proportionality in a couple of states, but by and large, it is winner take all in all the states. So what happens is, this is now we're coming to the interesting part. This is where the things start getting real interesting. What happens is, as I said, we have 50 states plus one state, which is not a state, but the District of Columbia, which is the center. So, but I'm calling it a 51 state. In this 51 states, 44 of those 51 states, we already know who is going to be the winner. Because these states have a track record of either being pro-Democratic Party or being pro-Republican Party.
It's openly declared.
So, for example, you take my case. I'm in Maryland. I may vote, I may not vote. It doesn't matter. This state will always go Democratic. So, which means that the electoral votes of this state will always go to the Democratic candidate. Whether I vote, whether I get my 1,000 friends to come with me and vote, it doesn't matter. It's already, the track record is very clear, historic track record. This is a Democratic state. Similarly, in New York State, you can bring a million people from wherever. It is a historical track record that it will be a Democratic victory. So what you have a situation is, you have 44 states where already the decision is known. So and each state has, as I told you, so many electoral votes depending on the number of senators. There are only 2 senators per state plus congressmen. So that varies, and so if I add that up, that adds up to actually about that's 24 states. 24 states will go to Republicans for a total of 219 electoral votes, and 20 states will go Democratic for a total of 226 votes. Even though there are fewer states in the Democratic camp, but they are bigger states like California, New York, Illinois, Chicago, and all. So they get more. So already out of the 538 delegates, we have already basically sort of taken over everything but 93 votes. So only 7 states are in the play. and these are called sometimes they are called
Swing
swing
states.
states because they
Hmm.
can go from Democrat, Republican. Sometimes they are called battleground states.
Hmm. Hmm.
So when you consider the election for the president, 44 states out of the 51, and as I said, I'm counting DC as the 51st state. 44 out of 51 don't count. They, their vote is kind of cosmetic.
Hmm.
It is these seven swing states whose vote counts. So right now you have the total electoral college is 538 votes. You need 270 votes to win. And so what I'm saying is right now the Democrats have 226 votes, so they are short of 44 votes. And Republicans, they have 219 votes, they are short of 51 votes.
Okay.
And those seven states together add up to 93 votes. So all this battle is for those seven states. Whereas state like mine, all that they're academic. They don't count.
Okay.
It doesn't. So and who and now which are those? Which are these states? These states are Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, and they have different vote sizes. The biggest vote contributor is Pennsylvania with 19, and then you have Georgia and North Carolina close behind with 16. So that's where the battle is now. Why am I saying all this? Because at the end of the day, we have just taken the big elephant and made him in the small elephant. Now it's a manageable problem, which means the ability of somebody to influence
Much
is
higher.
much easier when you have only to deal with seven states rather than 51 states.
Hmm.
You understand my point? And what are the parameters that will end up dictating which way the election is going? There are two
Hmm.
parameters in advance before you actually have the election itself, because the election will tell you what it is or not. The parameters are uh, opinion polls, which here tend to be much more accurate than, say, let's say in India. And the second one is the amount of money you raise, and that's really what the deep state watches, and that's how they get into the act when they have a certain objective, and they fall behind in that objective.
Hmm.
So having given you that background, we come to the next act, which is where does this deep state come from? And there is a very interesting history. The history is that it owes its existence to two brothers who were Democratic and two brothers who were Republican, and one lady who happened to be a sibling of the Republican brothers. The After the war, uh, Eisenhower becomes the Republican president, and he takes over. And he has two brothers there, John Foster Dulles, who becomes the U.S. Secretary of State, and Dulles, who becomes the head of CIA. And then there's their sister. Actually between the two boys. She is the middle child, and she is very much involved in her brother's activities, who are both invested in the government. And she's obviously married a rich guy. And I mean, these are all WASPs. These are all white Anglo-Saxon Protestants,
Hmm.
having gone to these guys went all to Princeton, so they're all Princetonians. And so she has this beautiful house with a big pool. In 50s that was a luxury.
Hmm.
Now of course almost everybody has it, but in 1950s that was a luxury. She has a big pool in this Washington suburb, right out, not very far from where Pentagon is. And she would throw these weekend parties, and they it started small, but eventually they became sort of the parties of choice. The year is 1951, Eisenhower's time, and certainly you could see all the, it started with a few active working people who were in the government, and a lot of retired people joined in, retired generals, retired security people, retired CIA chiefs, retired military generals, retired diplomats, retired ambassadors. It kind of became big. In fact, to the point where most of the actually, most of the regular working people who are still in service, they chose, to kind of not be as much associated as the retired people were. But the point is, these parties are on weekends, they are informal, and all they discuss there is is the global world order, what the role of America, how America can keep be the policeman, effective policeman in the world, and all that. Now there are also a few Democrats there. Most One of the big ones was actually Bill Bundy, that the brother, that, as I told you, the two brothers, Bill Bundy, and and Bundy family was also a rich family from New England. They were all from Yale, and he was already working in the CIA and Pentagon for Eisenhower administration. So they started this concept of keeping the world safe. So this is an integration. This is a marination of national security. It would be like what India has today as CCS, but except, CCS consists of, current working people. Most of these people were basically retired, off the record people. So they are discussing, global affairs. Of course, they have people there also who are in the administration, so they can actually influence the policies of the government. One of the challenges that Eisenhower faced was this group would advise him, and they were always hawkish. The thing is, Eisenhower had seen the war, and he had seen how terrible wars are, and so he wasn't that enthusiastic about a war. But this group is telling him, there was a big. I don't want to go back much in the history, but in 1954 there was actually a big fight between Taiwan, or Formosa, those days, and China. And this group is telling him, why don't you nuke China? Because China was not a nuclear power in 1954. It became a nuclear power in 64. And so they're telling him, why don't you put a small tactical nuclear weapon on China and bring them to their senses? So that was the kind of attitude. And actually, Eisenhower, when he on his day of his leaving White House, he gave a lecture. It was a short lecture, 10 minutes, but in that 10 minutes, he actually, for the first time, recognized that the thing that we have to most worry about and can be concerned about is the military-industrial complex. So for the first time, he actually sort of exposed the idea that there is actually a state within a state that is creating the rules and has the capability to implement it, because its friends are everywhere in the administration, because this is a cabal that works all together. There was a question whether or not the group will survive after Kennedy took over. But as I said, with Big Bundy and then his younger brother, Mac Bundy, who became the national security advisor for Kennedy, it was a smooth transition going from the Republican deep state to the Democratic deep state, where he assembled now all the Democratic oriented people in the structure, security, military, industrial structure. So they all came together. So that actually was the one when it became bipartisan in nature, going from Republicans to the Democrats, it basically got a life, and that life has continued till today. The thing is, what is interesting is there is actually a Democratic deep state and a Republican deep state, and they play musical chairs every time there is a change of the government from Democrat to Republican. So right now, for example, you have the Democratic administration. So all the people are right now in the government, of essence, and if they were to lose election to a Republican, then they will all move out to the various places like think tanks. There are democratic think tanks in Washington D.C. Brookings and Carnegie and American Center for Progress, and so many of them. And or they will move to the public affairs committees, which is lobbying groups, or they will move into the academia, or they will move to, because they're already in academia, they have taken a sabbatical, they'll move there, or they'll go into the corporate circles. And the other side will move into the into the White House and its other instruments of power. And they also come from their own think tanks, which is Heritage, which is American Enterprise Institute, which is Hoover institution. They have their own think tanks. They have their own public address companies. So this musical chair goes on, and of course there was an advantage in this because that gave a continuity to the American policies. That's why most people always wondered how is American election. Didn't really, we used to say it doesn't matter who wins or loses American election because these guys are all together. They just have a different shades and they just move from one place to other and they move around. So you have a Democratic deep state and you have a Republican deep state, and they just keep playing musical chairs until, unfortunately or fortunately, Trump shows up on the scene in 2016, and he is kind of a different guy.
Yeah.
He basically he says, I'm that lone ranger that will, I need to climb Mount Everest, I will do it. Somebody says, sir, you will need some Sherpas, you will need some training, you need some oxygen cylinder. He said, nah, that's too much burden. I'm going to climb it, go and climb it like that. I mean, you have that kind of mentality. We used to have nuts like that, Evil Knievel. We used to have, people who would just be daredevils. They would basically be all the time, chasing death, so to say. And he has that kind of a, attitude where he's supremely confident that he can overcome, the odds or whatever. And all these people, unfortunately, also have their own baggage of their personal histories. Though I will tell you one thing: this election again is very unique because all the players have lots of skeletons in their closet, whether they are Democratic or Republican. I mean, cases like prostitution, cases like having sex with their babysitters. I mean, the list is endless. Drugs.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go in there, but skeletons are all over the place. Now you'll say, but we hear more about this guy and less about that guy. Well, that I'll explain in a few minutes. But the problem mainly becomes he comes over, and the moment he came out, nobody believed that he will be selected as a candidate. And after the primary process, they thought he'll be killed in primary process in 2016. Well, he wasn't. He actually came out as a winner. So then at that time, you basically had a situation where a Republican deep state exposed itself. So he gets elected in July. In August, you have the top 50 national security experts from the Republican side writing a letter denouncing him. He's unfit to be the president. And few weeks later, a list of 75 diplomats who are Republican diplomats who served in Republican administrations come out and say, he's unfit to serve. So in a sense, what happens is the Republican deep state says, we're not going to be involved with this guy. You have selected him. It'll be we're not going. And quite honestly, the Democratic side was worried a little bit at the beginning. What will we do with this guy? Because he has his charisma is sort of similar to, let's say, Imran Khan in Pakistan. What will we do him? So they immediately put a small bug there, which is that he's a sort of a puppet of Putin, and they created that fake dossier, Kremlin dossier, using MI6. And basically plastered him with but they didn't spend a lot of time other than basically tarnishing his name and all that, because they thought, quite frankly, he is not going to win because he has been abandoned by the Republican deep state, and they're not supported, because the deep state has a tremendous advantage. You have basically a very coordinated command control center. Your outreach comes primarily through the media. You create an image, you can destroy an image, you can create a, positive images, negative images, depending, because because United States, if there's one weapon they have right now, it's the soft power weapon of mass communication. They are absolute masters of it, and most of it rests actually with the Democratic deep state.
Yeah. Mhm.
Republican deep state has only two major instruments. One is the Wall Street Journal, which is really not exactly Trump's corner, and the other one is now only recently in the last year, which is Elon Musk's X, social media. Other than that, everything else is under Democratic control. They create the stories. They mess up Google. They can make. They can. They can. Other day, people, when he was assassinated, when there was an assassinated attempt made on Trump,
Trump.
and you could put in America. You could put in Google. Donald assassinated or something like that, and the stories would show about Donald Duck, film of a Donald Duck being shot at by somebody else and all that. It wouldn't. It was just crazy. So that is the control these people exercise. So that is a massive control. They also control the people who are actually doing a lot of fun contributions to these candidates, because it is their job to convince them that if I look at these two parameters, which is opinion polls and funds raised, my candidate is leading or not leading, then what do I do in between? So you have a candidate who has been abandoned by his Republican deep state. You have a candidate who has got full support of which was Hillary Clinton, of her state, and there's an assurance that she's going to win. They didn't count on the fact that actually most of the Americans in the independent zone, who are necessarily not high, they actually do think America needs a change. We need to get rid of this war mentality that is basically created by the people in the deep state, and in effect, uh, Trump becomes a accidental president.
Hmm.
He didn't even himself expect that he was going to win.
Hmm.
So he becomes, it's very interesting because I had a close colleague of mine, and his son and daughter-in-law. They are both in the Democratic side. They were at that time in I believe in Philippines, and a day earlier, the his wife gets a call. He's a Kashmiri Pandit married to an American girl, and she gets a call saying that she has been given a post in the Hillary Clinton administration. This is one day before the post has been the election results are to be announced, and
Oh.
and they want her to fly back immediately, so she's on the job on day one. And she said to me later that I told them, but the election results will not come till tomorrow. They said, don't be silly. We have no time to waste. We know what the results are. And they paid her ticket and brought her to Washington D.C. only to find out the next day when she was still not here. She was still in the air when they found out that Hillary didn't make it. So he became an accidental president, and then of course they spend an awful lot of time basically sort of tearing him apart. And since he's lost so-called his political cover through the deep state system, he was sort of naked, and he had to handle all of this alone. And actually, even though he ran some good populist programs, but the reality was written. They were determined that he should lose,
Hmm.
and consequently, it was no surprise. And if you remember, when he was fighting in that election with Biden, and they told Biden, go and stay in the basement. You don't have to come out. You don't have to really give any messages. We'll take care of it. And it was really a deep state versus Trump, and Trump lost.
Yep.
Now, of course, when he lost, then they did to him Imran Khan thing, which is they put legal clause on him. Put him basically through hundreds of cases, which he is struggling with. And actually, believe it or not, there is a case which is coming up on September 15th by a Democratic lawyer judge who not only openly admits that he has contributed to Democrats, but his daughter is actually a fundraiser for a Democratic Party also. And in that one, there's a chance that he may order him to jail. And it will be interesting to watch whether, even though he supposedly on technical grounds he is a first-time offender, so they don't go to jail. But that's really judge's discretion. If you want, now the thing is, of course, he can always sort of go and go to higher courts. But so there are some sentences in the United States where you cannot get a pre-anticipatory bail here. There's no concept of anticipatory bail here. So you will actually have to be in a jail for a few days till somebody actually comes around and
bails you out or something.
and then we don't know what exactly the law is for a committed person who has been already jailed. Whether so there to me, I mean, Americans think this is law taking its own course. To me, it's Imran Khan USA version, and the deep state versus Imran Khan is being played right here, and so when we enter this election, what do we see? We see basically what are the strengths that Kamala Harris brings. She brings, she's a black woman, which is a plus in this country. She's a young black woman, which is even better. And so there's a big constituency that will support her in that sense, both from young people as well as she has the and I'll go over that a little bit later. She has actually the qualified Democratic deep state support. It's not unconditional, and I'll go into that a little bit later. Which still is positive, given the fact the other guy has nothing from the deep state, and she is sort of left leaning, and so that's actually sort of hurts her, because her vice presidential candidate, herself, she is not seen as being especially competent in many things, because she really didn't do anything that for which she can actually claim credit as a vice president. She was given some tasks, and she, quite frankly, even those days, even the leaks from the White House said, this lady doesn't really do anything. So it'll be very difficult, for her to actually discuss her own the safety. Her safety is that vice president in general are not supposed to be required to do a lot of things. So she can always go under that cloak. But the thing is that she has, she has the issue. She is a woman. She has a larger voter base, because Democrats in this country are more in number than Republicans. So she has a larger voter base, younger voter base, and best of all, she has the support of powerful politicians who are very well excelled in out of politics. Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. Bill is not that active in her election, but Barack is. Barack has a personal stake in making sure Trump doesn't win, because he felt almost insulted that Trump was his his follower after him election. I thought he kind of thought that kind of diminished his stature, and I think he's doing that. Now the things that are running, negatives for her, that is that she has a left leaning agenda, because her vice president candidate, most of the people were surprised and kind of shocked that she picked up a person who is who is to the left of her. Even he has always been a sort of a socialist. He proposed socialism and that sort of thing. Has been to China 30 times, and has interest with China and all that. So that's where the qualified state sports comes in, because they are not quite sure, exactly. So some of them are actually lying low. They Not everybody in there is thrilled about it. And what's interesting is she has, of course, the positive side. She has the control of all the mainstream media in this country. As I said, every one of them except Wall Street Journal, Fox News, and X. All other major networks. Then, of course, there are a whole bunch of small cable news and networks, but the major ones: CBS, ABC, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, all these, plus the other BBC. I mean, she has all the channels are in her pocket. So they create her image, which basically shows she's the greatest thing since the sliced bread, as we say in America, and of course show the other guy as being one of the silliest persons, making stupid jokes and remarks all the time. So that's the caricature that they are coming out. But this idea that she is to the left, and she came out with her economic plan, and she's talking about redistribution of wealth as a way for social equity, for social justice, which sounds, redistribution of wealth is a buzzword for essentially socialistic, the India pre 1992, that kind of a thing. While as he's talking about growth, which is based on liberalizing the market, removing the obstacles, removing the regulatory reforms, doing the drilling, things like that, which obviously Democrats don't like, because that's environmental issues and everything else that goes in there. But the big lobby that seems to have recently come in his side is the Jewish people.
Hmm.
Jews have been historically in this country, from Democratic Party.
Yeah.
By the way, Indian Americans are also 68% of the Indian Americans. Recent poll
Wonder
shows
why.
are Democratic Party. That thing. And so Jews have also been traditionally Democratic Party, but there is actually a swing now, because one of the interesting things that came out right now is this creation of the pro-Palestine, which was really not pro-Palestine but pro-Muslim lobby in United States. Basically, it owes its origins to Barack Obama and in the White House, and Nancy Pelosi in the Congress, because Nancy Pelosi would fund those programs. They encouraged Muslims in Michigan, Minnesota, etc., to come out, join the political process, and sort of mainstream these people. What they didn't realize is that in the end, they have just unleashed a Bindanwale effect in the country. So these are the people now who are just running amok. They are running out of control, and I can tell you the Democratic deep state does not like it, and that's one of
Hmm.
the key reasons why Biden had to go, because he essentially, his job was to understand. He knew, of course, that American strategic ties with Israel are unique and one of a kind, and his job was to sell a sense of accommodation towards Muslims, while at the same time not infringing on the viability of Israel, both as an idea as well as a state. And that fine line was basically breached.
Hmm.
And now, as I said, even today in Chicago, they are all out in full force. And of course, um, Kamla understands that, and she has been kind of telling those guys to shut up and go home and that sort of thing. But they didn't. And actually, there were two big incidents in Washington, a couple of months back, when they literally destroyed all the outside surroundings, outside White House, and outside the Congress, outside U.S. Capitol, defaced all the major, our patriot heroes of the revolution, that kind of thing, burnt American flag. And the worst thing was, it's almost like like India, in a state where where the ruling party is sympathetic to the protesters. They don't do anything. Literally not a single person in any of those two protests, where they were vandalized, they broke things, they you know they hurt policemen, They burned flags. Not a single person was arrested because the DC is a democratic, 100% democratic town, and I think that effect also had the effect on how the decision making goes. So she has a qualified support, and part of that is driven by the fact that, quite frankly, they owe it to her. She's a Democrat. The other thing is that on the Republican side, I see a lot of the people who had abandoned Trump in the earlier election. They are actually coming back. Not big names, but most the little names. They're coming back because for two reasons. One, for international purposes, because they see, they basically have no doubts in their mind that they want Israel to survive, and the threats to Israel to cease. And so they are coming back because they didn't see Democrats doing anything about it. And I'm sure they're talking to their counterparts in the Democratic deep state, and who are probably also encouraging them, hey, come back, because we got to solve this problem. This Biden administration just went in the wrong way. The second one is because of the her policies, domestic economic policies. More and more of it is coming out, and more people are realizing it's not your traditional American capitalistic system of economy. It's a social system of economy. She, for example, today said, or yesterday or a couple of days back said, she will pay some $10,000 or $20,000 to everybody who wants to build a house. I
Mm.
mean, what is that? That's the same. That's the same kind of thing where her predecessor Biden said, "I'm going to make all the educational loans that have been given to students free." That never happened because, quite frankly, it's tied up in the courts. I mean, somebody has
Mm.
to figure out where you get those trillions. I mean, the last Biden administration has spent money so much that the American dollar has been devalued internally. Fortunately, in the global market, it's still a desired currency. It's still the reserve currency, as they say. But in the domestic market, we can see the effect of inflation, which has literally been never been that strong before as it is right now. So our economy is in a bad shape. So the things that are helping Trump are the economy is in a bad shape that needs to be changed. The border crisis is of course, certainly in the last 3-4 months, almost all the Biden policies have been the same as Trump's policies until, but not not until the election time came. Other than that, they were just letting it everybody come in, and the crime in the U.S. has gone up astronomically,
Yeah.
and they defunded the police and so on and so forth. So we are now in a situation where basically there are some positives on the Trump side. There are negatives. Negatives being one of them being he makes personal attacks at people. Other being the command and control center is in his head because he's the one man. He's the what I will call the Moses Moses army, where Moses was taking all the decisions. I mean, he basically doesn't run it like a real what I will say campaign, which has
Mm.
got different people. And then he has this core group of people who actually do believe we need to step down. We need to be looking at how do we bring our peace. We need to stop being policemen of the world. We need to one of the interesting things is rule based order. What is rule based order? Rule based order actually turns out to be the common minimum program between the Democratic deep state and the Republican deep state. So that is the common minimum program. So when you say that, you know that it has the endorsement of both the parties. So it's a safe thing to say anywhere in the world because it doesn't matter who is running the country. He will the next party will also impose the same thing. But having said all of this, at the end of the day, we have now shown you the whole world there, but then we are only down to these 7 states. So it's between those 7 states where the
Mm.
two sides are fighting, and they're running neck to neck. And part of the reason they are running neck to neck is because they are saturating the market, because both sides at the end of the day will spend over $1 billion in this election, out of
Wow.
which literally about actually 1.5 billion to 2 billion, because literally 1 billion will be spent between today and November. $500 million from each side, and most of it is, of course, advertisements and social media put, and they will be saturating the ads, and they are looking at these. As I said, the ads are offsetting these poll numbers. So poll go down, you put the ads in. So it's almost like a recipe. How much do I put in to get the numbers up, and it works very well here, because Americans are very much swayed by the advertisement.
Mm.
That's why I would argue now today advertisement do make a big difference. The advertisers do spend a lot of money anywhere. I mean, the TV networks even in India are making a lot of money from advertisement, so it must be working somewhere. Uh, the other factor is what Kamla doesn't have to feel is that he is actually working against incumbent structure. The incumbent structure is all democratic. Democratic people are in the system, and he has this big legal cases around him. And I feel very strongly it will be very interesting to see, how they will. My own feeling is if the Democratic deep state thinks that he is going to lose in those states, because actually he has to remember there's only 93 votes in the play, and they are all both short of this. So if he gets 3 or 4 states, he will get those. If she has a better path, she has an easier path, because she has to win only in 3 states, and she can make those 44 votes. But the fact is, uh, I feel today that there's a 60% chance that they will not allow Trump to win.
Mm.
He will lose. And if the polls indicate otherwise, they will turn on the legal screws and basically ensure a legal lapse somewhere in the system that will not. So I kind of wrote my notes together, and I'll give you the the punchline. I said, if Trump wins, it will be a victory extracted out of the jaws of defeat, because they absolutely don't want him back.
Mm.
But his biggest saving grace in the last 48 hours has been, last 1 week has been the Jewish swing, Jewish money and Jewish voters making over to his side, which was not a factor before. Elon Musk making over to his side. Elon is another. People always discount him. He took on the General Motors. He took on NASA. He is a giant killer.
Mm.
So he brings a big, I would say, big guns with him. He brings also a lot of money. He said he is going to have something like 20,000 volunteers actually on the roads in those 7 states, and he will spend $160 million of his own money. So he's also a very strong man who has shown in the end that he can also. So yeah, so it's not a completely lost case, but my assessment is that the other side has many more instruments of, sort of, to wall him down, to wall him up,
Mm. Mm.
and then these guys have. So it'll be interesting to see, because unless he sneaks in just like he did last time, which is everything showed a day before that he was going to lose, and then except the people who hadn't, the polls hadn't really predicted, some people who were saying that, yeah, we're not going to vote for him, but actually did. Because see, that's another problem you have when you put such a, when say, like, I like Kamla Harris, but all the bombardment I get of advertisements says she's not a good person. So then a pollster calls me and says, "Are you going to vote for Kamla?" "Oh, no, I'm not going to. I'm not going to vote for her." And then you go and then I go and vote for her. So that's what happened in the last election, where
Mm.
where he had been demonized to the point where where people wouldn't admit in public that they are actually going to vote for him, but they did. So unless that sneaky thing happens, then he has a chance. So he has, as I said, he has Jewish money, Jewish people, his own core group, and Musk and his team. But that's just about it on his side. And whereas all the powers of incumbency rest with the other side, including legal hammer, which is on his. I mean, he has got. They put him through multiple. To his credit, he has not broken down. He has not.
Yeah.
He doesn't say the kind of things that an Indian politician says. He takes it along in the game. So he has kind of surprised them with that resiliency that he has shown. But election is really for Kamla to lose. I think the odds would favor her, in my opinion. But then there may be a surprise.
Hmm. Interesting story, sir. I must say this because this is something which is, not understood, I think, in India, because, people just don't understand the depth and the uh, brevity of the American system and
Yeah,
how.
it was very interesting. Just before the last election, when Trump versus Biden, a week or so earlier, Biden's son, who is also his very close advisor, Hunter Biden. So he's not just, I can't say, yeah, he's my son, and you know what, he doesn't discuss politics. I don't discuss politics. I'm just his loving father. And no,
Hmm,
they are
hmm.
partners, business partners, and political advisors. And he, when he was in the drug haze, he leaves his laptop with some dealer to fix up, and he forgets about it,
Yeah.
and then he doesn't recover it. That guy basically then takes it to somebody, and he opens it up, and there they see all the salacious material. So the moment that news came out, the Democratic deep state immediately swung into action, and they wrote a very strong condemnation, saying this is a Russian plot to
Hmm.
essentially, to harass our candidate, and it's a lie. It's a Russian conspiracy. And I have that letter here, but the letter is signed. I'll name a few people: Jim Clapper, former director of National Intelligence; Mike Hayden, former director of National Security Agency; uh, John Brennan, former director of Central Intelligence Agency; Thomas Springer, former deputy director of National Intelligence for Analysis. I mean, it goes on. These are all top echelons of the
Yeah.
American deep state on the
Security.
on the
Security.
Democratic side, and they're saying that is a Russian plot. And the tragedy is, we now today know that that was actually a genuine
Yeah.
laptop. Even he has. So you can see these guys. They were so determined that, so they don't surface usually. As I said, they surfaced other day when Biden was sort of thrown down, was overthrown. But they don't otherwise. And they published this letter. They surfaced, and they surfaced with a lie. So there are no rules in this game. So these guys can manipulate American elections also. So
Yeah.
what chance do you think other countries have?
I mean, it's so interesting that here is a country that basically is destroying itself from the inside.
Yeah, but from my perspective, if they can eat their own, what qualms do they have about eating somebody else?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's there, sir. That's something that one can actually, you know, predict or actually very clearly put their money on. Ki, boss, this is something that these guys will not fall back from. If they need to do this, they will just go ahead and do it.
They will go ahead and do it. As I said, if they have no qualms in their own home country, I mean, they just, in my opinion, there was a coup. I mean, they even Biden himself has told his friends that I
Mm.
didn't want to leave. These guys basically, you know, left me with no choice but
Yeah.
to announce my and now of course it's like a typical which Western culture thing where the day he said that, next day only they start praising him. He's the greatest guy. He's done more things for America than, yeah, than anybody else. He is, it was one of the best presidencies of America. I mean, they are giving him such laudatory. And today, of course, he was going to speak. Believe me, obviously that lecture is probably going on right now as we speak. The fact is, he will get standing ovations over, multiple standing ovations and all that. Uh, and in his heart, he must be thinking, "Hey guys, why did they kick me up if they think so highly of me?" So
19
that's
hours before Biden put in his papers so as to speak, uh, he had tweeted saying that I will not kind of back down.
yeah. No, no. I mean, even today he has already told people. He told people, somebody. He said the head of the team that dethroned him was Nancy Pelosi. He has already and that's on record about it's the public information here. And Nancy told somebody that, let me put it this way. I mean, she used some words to the effect that I love Joe a lot, but I hate Trump even more. And I didn't want to see. I thought, see what happened. The parameter. What happened in that case. What downed him was he was running both behind in polls as well as behind in money. Remember, these are the two metrics, and usually they run kind of parallel. But when the
Mm.
trend showed that there's absolutely both are in this are in favor of Trump, they panicked. So their goal still is, and it's much more than simply win or lose. It's not a football game. It's literally being seen as a matter of life and death for the Democratic Party. They are treating it like it's an essential threat to the United States to have this man back as the president.
This is going to be a very interesting time going forward. So thank you so
Yeah,
much, sir. This was a very interesting talk to realize that the greatest, and in quotes, greatest democracy in the world is not really a democracy, you know. And
yeah,
it's interesting. It's an interesting thing that a lot of people think that uh, this whole thing can be actually managed and this and that. And one thing we can see is that how this whole process has been manipulated over the years to suit certain interests. So it's amazing. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your time and the knowledge that you've provided, because it's going to be invaluable for all of us to understand going forward. And looking
yeah.
forward for another.
I thought people deserve to hear what's really what happens in this country, because as I said, for example, in my case, I'm in a state where I already know who my delegates are going to be voting for, so I don't
Mm.
even have to go to the election. And actually, by going from 51 states, as I said, counting BC, to 44 states who have no rule, so in effect, 86% of the states and probably 90 to 92% of the people have no say in the final outcome. The final outcome will be decided by those 7 states.
Amazing, sir. It's going to be a story to be reckoned with, because I think the future of this country is going to be based on these elections.
Yeah,
Um, it's not a very satisfying thing to see happening to a country that has potential of doing great things. But in any case, let's see what actually takes place. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, and
thank
hoping
you
for
again.
another interaction with you soon in the future. Thank you.